Would you believe me if I told you there's a professional football club that once had just one fan in the entire stadium? Meet Tiago Weda, man whose love for football defied all odds. Back in 2012, his beloved Brazilian club, Santa Cruz, was crumbling. Financial ruin, poor performance, and zero support in the stands had brought the club to the edge of extinction. In fact, during one match, Tiago was the only fan who showed up, but instead of walking away, he stepped up. He spent his personal savings, took on the monumental responsibility of club president, and launched a one-man rescue mission. Against all odds, he not only kept the club alive but helped it rise from the ashes, winning promotions, collecting silverware, and rebuilding a fan base that once seemed gone forever. But believe it or not, that's just the beginning, because I'm about to show you 10 of the most extraordinary football clubs in the world, each with a story more unbelievable than the last, like the club whose fans built the entire stadium brick by brick, or the one that forces players to train in ballet and somehow became one of the top teams in their country. But first, let's start with the club that sounds too fictional to even exist. FC Santa Claus, the real-life North Pole club. Yes, you heard that right. There is an actual football club named FC Santa Claus, officially based in Rovaniemi, Finland, the town that proudly calls itself the hometown of Santa Claus. The club fully embraces the Christmas spirit, home kits in red and white, away kits in festive green and white, and a jolly Santa Claus as their official club badge. It might look like a novelty team dreamed up by kids, but FC Santa Claus has a serious footballing history. Founded in 1993, they steadily climbed the Finnish football pyramid, and by 2010, they were just one match away from reaching Finland's second division. They even played international friendlies against big-name clubs like Crystal Palace and West Ham United. But just when everything seemed magical, the dream turned into a nightmare. In a bizarre twist, the club fell into bankruptcy due to debts related to organizing bingo nights. Yes, bingo destroyed Santa Claus. They were forced to restart in the 4th tier, eventually dropping even further to the 6th division, where they now struggled to stay afloat. Still, the legend of FC Santa Claus lives on, not just as a club, but as a symbol of how football can be both festive and fragile. The floating football pitch of Thailand, where champions learn barefoot now. Imagine growing up in a tiny fishing village in southern Thailand. No land, no sports facilities, just the ocean around you. For the youth of Panay Island, that was everyday life. But instead of giving up on their dream of playing football, they built their own pitch on the water. The kids of Panay AFC pieced together old wooden planks and fishing cages to create a floating pitch in the middle of the sea. It was small, uneven, and dangerously slippery. And if the ball rolled off the edge, they had to jump in and swim after it. But here's the twist. All that adversity made them stronger. The unstable surface improved their balance, and all that ocean diving boosted their endurance and strength. Soon, their barefoot training paid off. They began winning local tournaments and even became the Under-13 South Thailand champions. Beating teams that trained on proper fields, their legendary wooden pitch was eventually replaced with a modern floating plastic version. But it still sways with the waves, reminding everyone where it all began. Today, Panay FC is one of Thailand's most respected youth academies, and their floating pitch has become a tourist attraction for football lovers around the world. And while the kids of Panay had no field to call home, at least they had a team to fight for, because the next story is about an 18-year-old who traveled across borders chasing a dream, only to be rejected by every single club in the country. Imagine moving to a new country at 18, chasing your football dream, only to be rejected by every single team in the nation. Well, instead of giving up, Lewis Perry decided to do the unthinkable: start his own club from scratch. In 2013, this young Brit arrived in Gibraltar, a tiny British territory tucked at the bottom of Spain. Armed with nothing but his passion for football and a few mates from the local pub, Perry did what legends do. He built a team out of nothing. He got his grandma's pub to sponsor the kits, asked one of his drinking buddies to coach, and named the club Bruno's Magpies, in tribute to his beloved Newcastle United. Their first ever training session, held on a beach. Their squad, a collection of beer-loving regulars from the bar. This wasn't FC Barcelona, this was FC Belly, but the Magpies were just getting started. That same year, Gibraltar joined US, and overnight, the level of football in the country skyrocketed. Teams began bringing in professional players, foreign investments, and real infrastructure. So Perry adapted. He brought in better sponsors, improved training conditions, and eventually, a new Conera, former Olympic figure skater who once jointly owned Watford with Elton John. And just like Rocketman, Bruno's Magpies took off. They earned promotion, signed better players, and climbed the ranks. Within a single decade, the little pub team that started on the beach qualified for European competition, earning a spot in the UEFA Conference League qualifiers. In 2024, they even won their first European match, beating Derry City in the opening round. But the fairy tale hit a bump. In the next round, they came up against FC Copenhagen, a European giant, and the dream came crashing down. Knocked out of the tournament, their brief moment on the continental stage came to an end. To make things worse, Perry, dealing with a serious knee injury, was forced to stop playing and instead took on the role of joint chairman. And perhaps most heartbreaking of all, the iconic name Bruno's Magpies is set to disappear next season, as the club prepares to merge with another local side. But to fans around the world, they'll always be remembered as the pub team that played in Europe. And I'll drink to that. The Army team that plays in South Korea's top league now, while the lads at Bruno's Magpies could raise a pint after a big win. The next team on our list definitely can't, because this club is made up entirely of military soldiers and they're playing in South Korea's top professional league. Meet Gimcheon Sangmu FCSI, the sports division of the Republic of Korea Armed Forces. In South Korea, because of the ongoing tensions with North Korea, military service is mandatory for all able-bodied men, typically in their early 20s. This includes professional footballers who are often forced to pause their careers at their peak, but that's where Gimcheon Sangmu steps in. This club allows Korea's best footballers to serve their 18-month military duty while still competing in the K-League, the nation's top division. Here's how it works. Each year, only 15 players are accepted into the squad. They undergo military boot camp and have to follow strict military protocols. During matches, they wear normal kits, but off the field, they live like soldiers, wear fatigues, and train on military bases. Even their haircuts are regulation buzz cuts, and when they score, they salute the flag. These are top-tier athletes, some of the best in South Korea, but they get no special treatment. They go through the same drills, the same restrictions, and the same discipline as every other soldier. But here's where things get even weirder. By rule, the club is forced to relocate to a new city every 10 years, and when it does, it gets automatically relegated, regardless of performance. Why? Nobody really knows. Bureaucratic quirks, military policy, whatever the reason. It makes Gimcheon Sangmu one of the most unusual and strictly regimented football clubs on earth. Yet, despite the constant disruptions, they remain shockingly competitive, regularly challenging other K-League teams, proving that even under military discipline, football finds a way. As if being in the military, getting buckets and saluting after goals wasn't enough, Gimcheon Sangmu has another brutal restriction. They're banned from playing in international tournaments, like the prestigious AFC Champions League. That's right, no matter how well they perform in the K-League. The rules say, soldiers stay home. And the criteria to even play for Gimcheon are shockingly strict. You must already be a top-tier footballer, enlist for military service, and believe it or not, have a high school diploma. That's why even Son Heung-min, Korea's biggest football superstar, wasn't eligible to play for the Army team. Instead, he narrowly avoided full military service after winning gold at the Asian Games. Had he not, he would have been forced into a desk job as a civil servant, and the only football he'd play would have been in Korea's third-tier civil servant league, which honestly sounds almost as painful as playing for Tottenham Hotspur. But hey, at least Spurs finally won something this year. Meanwhile, Manchester United had their worst season in decades. So maybe it's time for some fans to jump ship to the fake Manchester United. The rebel fans who built their own Manchester United in 2005. When the Glazer family took over Manchester United, it felt like the soul of the club had been sold off. Ticket prices were rising. Corporate control was tightening. Fans were told to sit down, be quiet, and spend more. But a group of diehard supporters said enough is enough. So they created their own football club, FC United of Manchester Protest Club, by the fans, for the fans. They wanted to call it simply FC United, but the authorities said that was too generic. So they added of Manchester. It began from the ground up, literally. The club held open trials to build a squad from scratch. Over 900 players showed up. Their first manager, Carl Marginson, ran a fruit and veg delivery van. He got changed into a suit in the back of his truck before his first press conference. Sir Alex Ferguson wasn't impressed. Many Manchester United fans accused them of being traitors. And to make things worse, they didn't even have a stadium. But that didn't stop them. FC United of Manchester began their journey in the 10th tier of English football, and through pure actual community spirit, they worked their way up. By 2015, they built their own 4,400-seat ground and became one of the largest fan-owned clubs in the UK, with over 2,300 members having a say in how the club is run. They may be called Manchester United from wish, but they're proof that football still belongs to the people. The vegan football club that banned burgers, but while FC United raged against billionaires, this next club decided to fight burgers, bacon, and hot dogs. Welcome to Forest Green Rovers, England's greenest football club, and possibly the wokest team in world football. This tiny club from the village of Nailsworth, Gloucestershire, caught global attention in 2010 when it was taken over by Dale Vince, former hippie who became a renewable energy millionaire. And what did he do with his new club? He turned it vegan, completely pies, gone burgers, ban sausages, say goodbye. At the new lawn, Forest Green's home ground, fans are instead treated to quinoa, kale salads, and vegan pizza. Even the grass on the pitch is organic, and the stadium runs on wind and solar power. The players eat a fully plant-based diet. The training gear is made from bamboo, and the club is even planning to build the world's first wooden stadium. The result? They became the first officially recognized vegan football club in the world, and in 2018 were certified by the United Nations as the greenest club on earth. Of course, not everyone's a fan. Traditionalists hate it. Rival fans mock them. One club even tried sneaking meat pies into the away end as a protest. But here's the thing. Forest Green Rovers got promoted to League One, and for a club from a village with fewer people than a crowded Wetherspoons, that's nothing short of miraculous. At Forest Green Rovers, going vegan isn't just for the fans. Sure, Antonio Conte might have banned ketchup at Tottenham, but meat itself is off the menu for everyone at Forest Green. Players, staff, fans, everyone eats green. Chairman Dale Vince put it plainly, if you really need meat that badly, just bring your own ham sandwich. But the green revolution goes way beyond the kitchen. Forest Green is obsessed with sustainability. The club has cut its carbon footprint per supporter in half. And here's how. No pesticides or herbicides are used on the pitch. Solar panels power the stadium, rainwater is recycled, even used cooking oil is reused. And electric charging points are part of a park-and-ride scheme for eco-conscious fans, and, crazy as it sounds, it worked. Forest Green Rovers climbed all the way to League One, the third tier of English football. But success was short-lived. They suffered back-to-back relegations, falling down to the National League, England's fifth tier, yet Dale Vince still dreams big. The club has plans for a brand new stadium built entirely from wood. If completed, it will be the most sustainable football ground in the world. They call it Eco Park, and Vince claims it will be the greatest stadium on earth. But while Forest Green made headlines for burgers and bamboo kits, the next club made history by refusing to sign any foreign players, ever. The club that refuses to sign foreign players and still wins. Welcome to Athletic Club Bilbao, third most successful football team, not Barcelona, not Atletico Madrid, Athletic Club. And here's what makes them extraordinary. They've never signed a single player from outside their region, since 1912. Athletic Club has followed a near-sacred policy. They only sign players from the Basque Country, a small, fiercely proud region in northern Spain and southwestern France, home to just over 3 million people. That's it. That's their talent pool. No foreign stars, no big-name imports, just homegrown heroes. And somehow, they win. 8 La Liga titles, 24 Copa del Rey trophies. And they've never been relegated from Spain's top division, one of only 3 clubs with that honor. This policy has created a tight-knit, united team. Players grow up together, train together, and rise through the ranks together, creating chemistry that money simply can't buy. In recent years, they've produced talents like Aymeric Laporte, Inaki, and Nico Williams, Kepa Arrizabalaga. It's not easy. They don't just compete in La Liga. They're also battling Real Sociedad, their biggest rivals, for the same tiny pool of Basque players. Sociedad also had the Basque-only policy until 1989, when they opened up to outsiders. Despite these challenges, Athletic Club thrives. They even made it to the Europa League final in 2012 under the legendary Marcelo Bielsa, who brought rock and roll football to the Basque Country. And while the Basque-only rule applies to players, coaches can come from anywhere. The club has hired managers from England, Brazil, Yugoslavia, and beyond. So when you see Athletic Bilbao beating Europe's giants, remember, they did it with a team from home. No signings, no shortcuts. Just pride, loyalty, and community. The club that trained with ballet, and it actually worked now. Things are about to get really weird, because at number 3 on our list is a club that forced its players to train in ballet and somehow became one of the most successful underdog stories in Europe. Welcome to Gestersons FK, a small club based in a frozen town in northern Sweden, where temperatures regularly drop to -20 degrees Celsius. Not exactly football paradise. In 2011, they hired an unknown English manager named Graham Potter. Yes, that Graham Potter, the same one who would later coach Chelsea and now West Ham. Back then, Potter was a nobody with big ideas. And his biggest idea: if you want players to express themselves on the pitch, teach them to express themselves off it. So he put his team through cultural training, acting and theater performances, learning to paint, writing poetry, and, yes, taking ballet classes. At first, everyone thought he was crazy, but those ballet classes improved players' balance, coordination, and confidence. And suddenly, Gestersons started winning. They climbed through Sweden's lower leagues and won the Swedish Cup in 2017, qualifying for the Europa League. And what happened next? They went on a giant killing run, beating Galatasaray, PAOK, and even taking on Arsenal, beating them 2-1. At the Emirates in 2018, this tiny team from the Arctic Circle had pirouetted its way onto the European stage. Back in 2011, Sons FK was a club no one cared about. Morale was at rock bottom, fan interest had disappeared, and they had just been relegated into footballing obscurity. The club was so irrelevant, they struggled to get more than 2 people into the stands. Enter Graham Potter, a little-known English manager armed with a master's degree in emotional intelligence and a suitcase full of wild ideas. Potter knew traditional coaching wasn't going to work here. So instead of spending afternoons dribbling around cones or running set-piece drills, his players were rehearsing Swan Lake on Tuesday afternoons. No, seriously. Potter brought in a culture coach, had the players put on a theater production for the locals, made them write a book together, and even organized a public art exhibition. At first, the players hated it, but then something magical happened. They found confidence. They found belief. If I can perform ballet in front of 1,000 people, one player said, then I can handle a football match. And somehow, it all worked. This ragtag group of English lower league rejects danced their way up the divisions, earning promotion after promotion, all the way to Sweden's top tier. Then in 2017, they won the Swedish Cup, qualifying for the Europa League. And in Europe, they shocked everyone. They beat Galatasaray, they beat Hertha Berlin, they drew with Athletic Bilbao, and then they faced Arsenal in the knockout stages. Everyone wrote them off after a 3-0 loss in the first leg, but in the return match at the Emirates Stadium, GST Stardom beat Arsenal 2-1, a symbolic moment of triumph for a team that had once been called a joke. Some of those players have since gone on to represent their national teams, and Graham Potter, he went on to coach in the Premier League with Brighton, Chelsea, and now West Ham. So next time you hear of a manager doing something crazy, remember, Tuesday Ballet might just win you a Thursday night in Europe. The superfan who became club president Tan, while Sund had 200 fans, that was still 199 more than this next club had. Because in 2012, when Brazilian club Santa Cruz traveled for an away match against Grêmio, only one supporter showed up. His name, Thiago Rec. He wasn't just a fan, he was the fan. When Santa Cruz scored early, he celebrated alone. When they collapsed to a 4-1 defeat, he sat slumped in the empty stand, plastic cup in hand. Heartbreak written across his face. TV cameras zoomed in. The image of one lonely man supporting a collapsing club went viral around the world. And while most people would have walked away, Thiago came closer. 1 year later, Santa Cruz hit rock bottom. The club was bankrupt. It had 4 staff, no money, and no future, so they turned to the one man who had never abandoned them. They hired Thiago to work in marketing and communications, to try and find sponsors and keep the lights on. And against all odds, he started to turn things around. Over the years, he worked his way up the ranks, securing sponsors, rebuilding trust, and slowly reviving the club's identity. Eventually, they made the most poetic decision of all. They named Thiago Rec president of Santa Cruz, first fan ever to rise from the stands to the boardroom. But the job wasn't a dream, it was a war. Santa Cruz was buried in debt, players were unpaid, the stadium was crumbling, and every day Thiago had to fight, not just for wins but for the very survival of his childhood club. And yet, somehow, they fought back. Under his leadership, Santa Cruz earned promotion, won silverware, and most importantly brought the fans back. From being the only voice in the stadium, Thiago became the man who helped fill it again. Because, in football, loyalty like that doesn't just deserve a seat, deserves the whole stadium. In the end, the pressure became too much. Thiago Rec had used his own savings, maxed out credit cards, and put everything on the line to save Santa Cruz. But it wasn't sustainable. The emotional weight, the sleepless nights, the endless statistics, all came crashing down. So, he quit. He went back to being what he was all along, a fan. Just a man in the stands, cheering for the club he loved. But a few years later, disaster struck. Santa Cruz was dying again. The debts had returned. The club was broken, and Thiago was told, unless you come back, this club will cease to exist. So once again, he stepped up. And this time, he finished the job. Thiago paid off the bills, brought in better players, and turned a crumbling side into a competitive team. He led them to promotion into the top tier of the Gaucho State League, and even delivered silverware to a club that once had nothing. All of it because of one man, who once sat alone in an away stand with a plastic cup in his hand. The stadium, built by the fans' hands and blood. And when it comes to superfans, you have to hear about one, FC Union Berlin. This isn't just a club, it's a movement. Based in East Berlin, Union struggled for decades in the shadow of the more powerful Hertha Berlin, especially after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Reunification didn't bring prosperity. It nearly bankrupted them. But what kept the club alive wasn't money, it was loyalty. Union Berlin boasts more than 70,000 members, incredible for a club with a stadium that seats just 22,000. That stadium, by the way, it had fallen into such disrepair that Union weren't even allowed to play there. So instead, of begging for investors, the fans built it themselves. Over 2,300 supporters volunteered their own time to rebuild the stadium by hand. They took shifts after work, poured concrete on weekends, and even slept on site. In total, they gave over 140,000 hours of free labor to restore their spiritual home stadium, an der alten Försterei. The only work they outsourced was the cantilevered roof. Everything else, built by fans, for fans. And when the club faced financial collapse, Union Berlin supporters didn't just open their wallets, they donated blood literally. In Germany, you get paid for blood donations, and Union fans used that cash to keep the club alive. That's not a slogan, that's a heartbeat. For years, they were laughed at by their city rivals Hertha Berlin. But in 2019, Union finally earned promotion to the Bundesliga. Then, they kept climbing, kept fighting, kept defying gravity. That in 2023, this underdog, fan-owned, Christmas carol-singing, sofa-sitting club qualified for the Champions League, the biggest stage in European football. A club once built by bare hands and open hearts, now standing among Europe's elite, because sometimes, football isn't just about glorious, sometimes, it's about identity. Sometimes, it's about community. And sometimes, it's about one man in an empty stand, or 2,000 volunteers with hammers and hope. These stories aren't just fairy tales. They're proof that in a game dominated by billionaires, passion still matters. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, and definitely check out the one on screen now, because it's even better than this one.